Underwater discoveries to give you nightmares.
Hey everybody, welcome back to Titanic. I'm your host, Alexa.
Taking a dip in the ocean is generally considered a good thing, but after hearing today's list, you may want to reconsider your next trip to the seaside. Here are some underwater discoveries that will give you nightmares.
If you're new here, make sure that you're subscribed and ring the bell so that you never miss our brand new content.
Long-lost locomotives. In 1985, Captain Paul Hepler was mapping the ocean floor off the coast of New Jersey when he found two rare locomotives. The choo-choos were sunk deep below the surface, sitting on the seabed 90 feet below. Divers were sent down and found that it was some of the oldest steam trains ever built in the U.S., but it was a complete mystery how and when they got there. There have been numerous theories about how the ocean floor came to be their final resting place, from pirates or time travel to alternate universes, but the most likely remains that they blew off the deck of a ship when they were being transported during a storm. Giant squid. There is good news, and there's bad news about the giant squid you might have seen in horror films. The bad news is that the giant squid is real, not just a made-up creature. The good news is it's really elusive, and luckily it shies away from human contact. It was only in 2001 that people saw a giant squid alive for the first time, and only a year after that it was photographed. Before that, the only evidence it existed at all was washed-up carcasses. It's the most elusive creature on Earth. Well, the most elusive creature that we know of, and they can reach 43 feet long. It has taken many voyages to the deepest ocean corners to finally capture a photograph, so thankfully you are safe from ever being photobombed by a giant squid while shallow wading. Human feet. The number of human feet that have washed up in the Pacific Northwest of America alone has reached 15 in the past decade. From boot-clad to barefoot, the feet have made their way to coastlines to petrify beachgoers who stumble upon them. On New Year's Day 2019, beachwalkers on Jetty Island in Everett, Washington were greeted by the remains of a human foot in a hiking boot. Curiously, officials who attended the scene couldn't find any other remains. It took 10 months, but finally the Snohomish County Sheriff's Office announced that the foot belonged to Antonio Neal, a 22-year-old reported missing in December of 2016. In May 2019, the Royal Canadian Mounted Police found another single foot wearing a hiking boot on Gabriola Island near Vancouver. It sounds like the stuff of serial criminals, and endless theories have circulated about this strange phenomenon. But it turns out there's a pretty rational scientific explanation. Well, in the sense of explaining why a foot would be detached from the rest of its human. Basically, the science you need to know is that in water, human bodies naturally disarticulate or come apart at the joints. While mystery often remains around the exact demise of the body belonging to the washed-up feet, it is clear that they were, for the most part, attached when the person passed. Manganese nodules in the Atlantic Ocean. From a distance, looking at parts of the ocean, the floor looks like fields with round shrubs dotted all over them. But these are manganese nodules that naturally form on the ocean floor. They've been discovered in the Pacific and Atlantic Oceans. They're made up of layers and layers of metal ore crystallizing around a core, almost like a jawbreaker. The novelty of finding them is that because they are formed over millions of years, they contain plenty of data for scientists to better understand the Earth's climate. The mysterious Julia Sound. Only 5% of the ocean has been explored, so what mysteries the ocean depths contain is anyone's guess. But since the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration has been recording the sounds of the deep, it seems that although we haven't explored them, they are talking. One noise got on the NOAA's radar in 1999. The eerie noise lasted for 15 seconds and was like a person cooing or whining. Scientists named the sound Julia, which the name itself makes it seriously creepy. But the origin of the noise completely stumped all the researchers who tried to get to the bottom of it. One theory is that it's an Antarctic iceberg running into the sea floor, but nothing is proven, and Julia has never been heard since, so monsters are not off the table. Another sound that continues to puzzle scientists is the noise called upsweep, which is uniform and periodic, and is not random but rather like clockwork in its predictability. It didn't fit any naturally occurring phenomenon. No seismic shifting, no lava boiling over, no weather pattern could explain it. It's still anyone's guess. The ghost fleet of Truck Lagoon. In 1944, things weren't great for Japanese forces, so they consolidated a lot of their navy to the Truk Lagoon in the Caroline Islands. They were sitting ducks, and the Allies launched a massive air raid. In over 2 days, the Japanese lost 50 ships and 250 airplanes. Because of the ongoing war, there was no cleanup of the island, and the sunk war materials were lost to the bottom of the ocean. In the 1960s, divers began exploring the lagoon and found the eerie graveyard left behind. From ships to tanks, airplanes, and the bodies of sailors, all were well maintained in the pristine conditions of the deep, still waters. Since then, the bodies have been removed, but it remains a favorite dive spot full of interesting historical artifacts. The Great Blue Hole. This really looks like the ocean just opens up and sinks down to the center of the earth. The Great Blue Hole of Belize has been a big attraction since Jacques Cousteau explored it in 1971. Since then, the sinkhole has been a top spot on many bucket lists, but most only venture a fraction of the way down into the Great Unknown. It's the largest sinkhole ever recorded at 300 meters across and 125 meters deep. It was formed from a limestone cave falling in hundreds of thousands of years ago. Today, it's a breathtaking and nerve-wracking natural phenomenon. The disappearing island of Burmaha. One day, there was an island off the coast of Mexico called Burmaha, and the next day, it was no longer there. Well, perhaps it isn't really that straightforward, but it is certainly a case of a vanishing island. The first known maps that record the island are from the 17th century, but then in the 1800s, many maps omitted Burmaha. Then in 1844, the British claimed they found the island, but that it was now a few hundred feet below the ocean. Then there was an 1875 map by the United States that included the island in a 1946 map where it again featured. Hope you're keeping up, because then in 1997, when the Mexican government sent out an expedition, a Houdini-worthy disappearing act, and it was gone again. Many conspiracy theories exist about the island being blown up because of political lines around offshore drilling rights, but who knows? Evolution Overdrive. Right, so try and keep up. Deep in the North Atlantic Ocean, scientists have found a series of smoking volcanic vents and tall chimneys that are creating a hydrothermal vent zone, which is the first to be explored in the area. They're about 9,800 feet deep. Why they're worth mentioning is the mad evolution of creatures that have been happening around it and the speed at which they are adapting to the new natural phenomenon of the vents. They are quickly adapting to the crushing water pressures and darkness, and even thriving in the volcanic waters that reach near boiling. Cameras sent down have captured HD pictures of some of the weird and wonderful adaptations, like bright orange shrimp that have lost its eyes but have developed a new way to see through an infrared light sensor at the top of its thorax. There are swirling carpets of bacteria, twisting scale worms, and eelfish. According to one of the scientists, it's an example of what happens to organisms when they become isolated and evolution goes into overdrive. Skeleton Lake of Rookund, India. While guarding in Rookund, India in 1942, a British forest guard experienced a higher-than-normal ice melt in the 16,000 feet high lake he surveyed. Soon, skeletal remains began floating up from the deep, and then some more, and then a 200 people strong pile of bones revealed itself along the lake's edge. Immediately, the wartime paranoia struck, and it was assumed that it was the remains of Japanese soldiers who died while sneaking through India in the cold winter. The British government sent a team to investigate, and soon it was determined the bones were too old. But it was still unnerving as to what happened. Everything from epidemic to rituals and landslides was suggested, but nothing explained what happened at Skeleton Lake. In 2004, a new expedition finally uncovered the truth as to where the skeletons have come from. The bodies dated back to 850 AD, and they had died of a similar fate, blows to the head. It was clear the people were pilgrims, new to the area, traveling without permanent cover, and had been caught in, of all things, a hailstorm. What are some of the creepiest things you've ever heard of being found underwater? Let us know about it in the comments below. 1. Delving deep. If you weren't already freaked out about some of the previous entries, then the following underwater animals will bring nightmares to the bravest of souls. Somewhere under the surface of the ocean, a living fossil is merrily going about its day, unaware of just how terrifying it is. Frilled sharks, despite their looks, are not that dangerous. I know, it's hard to unsee the generous rows of needle-like teeth, but those teeth are primarily used to eat squid and maybe small fish. The black swallower takes things to another level because this small fish swallows its prey whole. Fortunately, they're only prevalent at depths of 10,000 feet, so you're safe when you go for a splash in the waves. Pacific viperfish are also not high in the looks department and rely on bioluminescence to lure their prey in. They generally stick to the deeper waters, but if food is scarce, there's nothing stopping this bad boy from heading to shallower waters. Lamprey also boast a mouthful of razor-sharp teeth, which are present on its tongue. They latch onto their prey, forge a hole through its skin, and suck out the blood and insides. Goblin sharks don't get that name for nothing. They look exactly like goblins, with awful-looking snouts and mouths with rows of ultra-sharp teeth. These fearsome-looking sharks were first discovered in 1898. But even after hearing all this, please don't reconsider your next dip in the ocean. We promise that these creatures won't bother you at all.